I wasn't going to the country, but I said nah. Yeah, I said nah. Right now, my little funds ain't straight. So next month, yeah, next month I'll be good. If I go fix me something, I might go fix me something to eat. Homie, you get some rest, bro. I'll meet you back in a few. All right, dog. 1-1.
All right, Brooke, thank you very much. Actually, we're going to keep the focus on Columbia University. The Trump administration may take the crackdown on Jewish hate even further, reportedly, by pursuing a legal arrangement to put Columbia University under a consent decree. That would put a federal judge in charge of ensuring the school complies with federal law. Now, if they put that in place and the judge says Columbia has failed, the university could be held in contempt of court as well as face fines and time behind bars for somebody. The Wall Street Journal headline: Trump administration will install federal oversight of Columbia University. And it goes on to say government is aiming to legally bind the schools to changes as they negotiate over federal funding. In focus now, Sean Hannity, host of Hannity and host of Sean on Fox Nation. Great to see you. Great to see you, Harris. I'm well. How are you? I'm very good. By the way, can I start out with one selfish note that's praise as you? Nothing in the world makes me happier to read that you beat the ladies of that hard-hitting news show, The View. Just makes me very happy. I know you're too humble to probably tell your audience, but I can brag for you. But that makes me very happy. Congratulations. We've been friends a long time. God bless you, my friend. Thank you. And a big reason why I'm here is you know that. That's a story. We should tell that story on Sean sometime. I would love for you to come. That would be fine. I did an hour and 40 minutes with Sage Steele last night. I love doing the podcast. I love long form. I love going deep hard in the paint. It's a lot of fun. But let me go to your question here, because there's a lot of issues that are in play here. If you think of these universities and you look at their anti harassment, what is your opponent, which they often have at the beginning of the school year, and their rigid policies, which maybe in some cases are warranted and right. Why did Columbia University allow students to go up to Jewish students or ask students as they were walking past these encampments, oh, are you a Zionist? And if they said yes, they were not allowed to pass through. Why did Columbia University put up with that? Why was their answer to tell Jewish students to stay home and learn from home? And I have a bigger question. Why does one American taxpayer dollar, why does 1 cent go
Go
to
to the child.
university
Thank you.
first with all the endowment
Thank
money
you.
that they have?
Thank you. That's what I want to know.
Discriminatory policies, because we've got to remember,
That's what I want to know.
Hamas is a
What the fuck is
designated
we getting
terrorist
that money for?
organization. I don't know what part these overeducated kids don't understand about what happened in October of 2023. I'm not sure what part of murder and rape and kidnapping and torture and beheading they don't understand, but apparently their education has not gone far enough. But the idea that one taxpayer dollar goes to these schools that have institutionalized hatred and discrimination is a waste. Well, why would why would a carpenter, why would a teacher, why would a plumber, why would anybody in the trades have to be paying or contributing money to a kid to go to an Ivy League college? If you want to make the argument, a community college or a trade school that would benefit their life, certainly more cost effective, good for society, but you're not entitled to taxpayer money to go to your ivory tower university.
Well, and the point that you're making is one that the Trump administration is looking at now, because they're in negotiations. So $400 million are frozen going to Colombia. And Colombia has kind of, John, become the litmus test for all of this. You've got Mahmoud Khalil from that university in now process against the Trump administration as they look to, deal with him, kick him out potentially of the country. They see him as a threat to the United States national security, according to our Secretary of State, Marco Rubio. But $400 million for what exactly? Because the egregious things that you've just listed, I would argue you could get those for free and not shameful. But to pay the school while that goes on is beyond shameful.
It is a designated terrorist organization. The Secretary of State, Secretary Rubio, is 100% right. In the charter of Hamas, it says that it calls for the destruction of Israel. These are groups that believe in death to Israel, death to America. This is a terrorist organization. It's not that long ago that we were covering 9/11/01, and that radicalism still exists, and it is now.
My wife got this crazy new tool as a Christmas gift. God, I love her. It looks like a block with these weird pins in it. I plug it into my car and bam, the health of my entire car shows up on my phone. I was blown away by how much money this has saved me. I knew about car scan tools, but none are like this after wasting hundreds of
reared its ugly head on college campuses all around the country, and especially in these Ivy League institutions. And they're trying to ask the taxpayers to pay for it. I think you've got to draw a line in the sand and say enough's enough. But it also does say something about the Democratic Party, and that is they are the party now that supports radicalism. They are fighting, for example, we have the SAVE Act. Why would you not want some type of standard in terms of voter ID, signature verification, chain of custody controls? Why don't we want integrity in our voting system?
That's a great question.
Partisan observers watching the voting all day, the vote counting all night, updated voter rolls. These are simple, basic, fundamental things. Proving that you are an American, that you really have a right to vote, is that so difficult to ask somebody to do? Because if I want to buy a beer or a Juul pod, or if I want to buy even a Zyn nicotine pouch, which I shouldn't admit that I use, I need to show an ID. And
that's right.
You need to show it. So it's ridiculous. The whole thing is ridiculous to me.
All right, I want to get two things. And one, and you mentioned this, and it's so true, Democrats are wearing some of the responsibility on this, maybe all of it, because they're silent. And you can say, well, a few people have spoken up. My goodness, there are hundreds of them who work between the Senate and the House. It should be deafening how much they're speaking up, but it's not. And then there's this point in the House, though. Some key legislation now has advanced President Trump's agenda on this very thing. You mentioned the SAVE Act. It mandates proof of citizenship to vote in federal elections. Only 4 Democrats crossed party lines to join Republicans in voting for it.
That's why we should demand that they be fired, the one that didn't vote for it.
Our elections for us as Americans.
They need to be fired.
The measure will also require removing non-citizens from voter rolls. Most Democrats made the same argument against the bill ahead of the vote. Republicans now clapping back. Watch this.
70 million American women will be unable to register to vote using their birth certificate
simply because they changed their name upon marriage.
This backward legislation would immediately disenfranchise the 69 million women who have changed their names after marriage.
Now a woman is a woman.
Don't want you to vote.
Now a woman is a woman.
Hearts on the other side.
Now a woman is a woman.
Using married women as a gotcha.
Now a woman is a woman.
Bring my birth certificate to.
Now a woman is a woman.
That I was a registered voter. Since we're using women as bait here, maybe in the next round of debates, they could explain to us exactly what a woman is.
There you go. There you go. There you go. There you go. There you go.
Oh, I know. Oh, that was a moment when he didn't even know he was misgendering somebody and got called out. Look, the big question to me is this. Why isn't it only Americans voting in American elections? And who doesn't want that?
It runs deeper though, and you're hitting on really significant issues today, but there are more. I mean, think about this. They have now, the Democratic Party is so radicalized. Their leaders are Jasmine Crockett, AOC, and Bernie Sanders handing off, I guess, the mantle to AOC. This is a party now that champions the rights of men to play women's sports. They put the rights of the illegal immigrants and even their right to vote without voter ID, or the rights of Tren de Aragua members, as Jamie Raskin wants to bring them back from El Salvador, over the safety of the American people. A party that screams bloody murder if you find $150 billion in waste, fraud, abuse, and corruption. But it's even worse than that. Go back to the president's joint speech before Congress. I mean, you didn't have a single Democrat stand for the First Lady. Okay, they didn't stand for the president. But you can't stand for mothers whose children were murdered by unvetted illegal immigrants. You can't stand for a young man who survived cancer against all odds and became a Secret Service member that night. He's 12 years old.
Yep.
You can't stand for the mother of a hero slain soldier who got killed in the line of duty, or a young man that lost his father and got a commission at West Point. And
that's why we should demand that they all be fired.
Up a paddle as, acting like
what are we gonna get out of people still want to go against Donald Trump's agenda?
That's great if you support President Trump, but I don't think that's going to move the needle. And their chanting and radicalism, like we see on display every weekend, I don't think it's going to embrace. I don't think many people will embrace it. Yeah.
In a country where we are divided, we do want people to have, though, a sense that there are not only heart donors in the room, and that's what that night felt like a lot of the time. Sean Hannity, it's been great to have you. Thank you so very much for being in.
I love being on your show. Congrats on all your success again.
Thank you.
That's right. Harris beats that hard-hitting news show, The View, and I couldn't be happier.
Thank you, Sean. Take care.
Hey, you probably go to The View, girl. I ain't mad at you. I see one thing, you'll change The View for good. You'll change that bitch. The View needs to be changed. Whoopi Goldberg, that's a sorry piece of shit there. Some damn man.
Once the bus is secure, Demolitions is driving it to Sandy Shores. The pilot's going to LSIA. Here we go. Okay, you're splitting into 2 teams. Transporter, officer, you're the ground team. To start with, you'll collect our bus from the junkyard in Sandy Shores. Demolitions, you're the perimeter team. You'll be hijacking the inbound Bolingbroke transport. The pilot's going to LSIA. And me? I'm gonna put up some smoke in a nice crowded public place. We've given everyone an AP pistol and a special carbine, so there's no fighting over who's the favorite. Demolitions has got a jerry can and some sticky bombs too. Let's get to work. We've paid them off at LSIA. They'll open the gate and let you on the runways.
Measles outbreak. At least they're lying in some places and not others. The media is spinning this. Aren't you surprised? 2 children have died in Texas with the measles, but the media is simplifying this to say measles outbreak due to lack of vaccination. And now HHS Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. has switched to position on the measles vaccine, strangely. Dr. Robert Malone is writing about this every other day, basically, on his Substack, his newsletter, and you should read it. He's an internationally recognized scientist and physician, one of the original inventors of the mRNA vaccine as a technology. He says we're getting a lot of propaganda right now, and he joins us because, in fact, these deaths, may, he says, have been caused by a medical error, which he writes is the third leading cause of death in the United States. So what? Dr. Malone, thank you for joining us. Can you give us a rundown of these 2 deaths and what the media is telling us versus the reality?
So the claims are that these are deaths from measles. We've all experienced this kind of sleight of hand in media positioning during the COVID crisis, where we saw the overcounting of deaths attributed to COVID, whether or not they were actually caused by COVID or whether the individual that unfortunately passed away had another condition that was a possible cause of death, but in addition had a PCR positive test in nasal swab. And if so, then the kind of the default protocol was that such deaths would be declared as a death from COVID, even if the individual had been a major automobile accident or had a gunshot wound to the head. So here in the case of measles can kill. That's clear. But it's extremely rare in healthy children. It's very much like, and if you have children that have a major pre-existing condition or some other complication, measles is immunosuppressive and it can exacerbate whatever the pre-existing problem is and set those children up for other infections. So in the case of this outbreak in West Texas, unclear the original origin of the measles virus entering into a religious community that has historically refused vaccination, as is the case with many. The virus spread rapidly because measles is incredibly infective. And it spread rapidly through that community, and it has affected some of the surrounding members that have been vaccinated because the measles vaccine is, let's say, generally far from perfect in terms of its protection and in terms of its adverse events. What is really at the front of this right now is the weaponization of fear around this. This outbreak is actually smaller than, for instance, the one in Ontario, Canada, that none of us have heard of. There's typically multiple outbreaks in the United States, and particularly in Europe and throughout the world, every single year. Now, previously, the United States was considered to have eradicated measles because they had not had one of these major outbreaks for a period of time over a year. But now, as is often the case, we are having such outbreaks. And the press is amplifying this and immediately weaponized it as an attack against the new Secretary of HHS, as if he was responsible for this long-standing religious community policy of not accepting these vaccines. And these accusations came almost immediately after his confirmation, so it's particularly absurd on the face. But that's the play that's ongoing, and the fear porn, or what I call psychological bioterrorism, much akin to the psychological bioterrorism that's going on about the infectious disease avian influenza, which you covered in your earlier segment, as apparently having some component there of enhancing business opportunity for certain egg producers. Here, what we have is media amplifying fear, spreading fear, fear sells, fear gets clicks and likes and follows, and in particular talking about deaths of children. Unfortunately, when you look at the details, the clinical records of these two children that, for instance, the New York Times and many others are asserting were deaths from measles, what you find is that in this area of West Texas, there appears to be a problem of, let's say, gently medical competence. And in both cases,
Do you think that's the headline? Because I read this as mother, and I'm terrified because the father said she needed a nebulizer. She didn't get it. The other one got the wrong antibiotic. This is, if they really want to scare me, this is the real story.
I agree with you. And what came out to us from Children's Health Defense is that here Corey was able to get access through CHD to the actual medical records of this most recent hospitalization. And what it reveals is an unfortunate young female child that had, at some point, measles. Her presentation with measles corresponds to when she was hospitalized. She had a pre-existing thrush infection, so this is a yeast infection, an indication of immunosuppression. And while she was in the hospital where she developed this measles rash, she had some ineffective antibiotic treatment. It reduced her symptoms. They discharged her. She immediately got worse. She came back into the hospital. They misdiagnosed what now we see is clearly a hospital-acquired multi-drug resistant E. coli infection that was the source of her pneumonia. And they did not treat it properly. So this is, as with the prior case, this is another case of where a hospital team, an ICU team, it's a care unit team, had, it appears, bias. They repeatedly put into the clinical notes that that this person, this young child, had measles, and that was the explanation. She had measles pneumonia. In fact, she didn't. So they had some sort of a cognitive bias that this must be measles. As a consequence, they didn't run down the other parts of the differential diagnosis. And it turned out that, in fact, what she had was a sepsis, pneumonia, and the culture results indicate that it was from a multi-drug resistant E. coli that she probably picked up in the prior hospitalization. A hospital is dug in on this. They insist that this is a measles test, but there is no autopsy report. There is no death certificate. This is I don't know what else to call it. This is propaganda or covering their backside at the hospital. appropriating a media trope of the lethality of measles. It appears in order to hide their own views.
It's shocking. It's shocking and it's terrifying to think they could go into the hospital for help, that they could miss things that they could have treated if they were just being let grow. And so,
Or that you're trying.
yes, yeah, absolutely. And so now Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is visiting the families, and he's saying things that are contradictory to what he has said before. He's always said that the MMR vaccine should be a personal choice, and that we need more preventative, more studies about it. And he just said the other day that the most effective way to prevent the spread of measles is the MMR vaccine, which is surprising. It's a surprising.
Okay,
What we've
stop for a minute, okay?
Okay.
That statement is not the same as saying go out and get the measles vaccine.
Okay.
Okay, it's the press and the Baja base is taking that and running with it, and they're misunderstanding what they're reading. Like, so both sides have their own problems with actually listening to words and appreciating what's being said. What Bobby is saying there is really accurate. We have no other good tools for slowing the spread of measles. Measles is incredibly infectious. It has if you followed my Substack, it has an R naught that's in the 8 to 10 range. This is one of the most infectious viruses possible. And even a partially effective measles vaccine will slow the spread of this virus. And we have no other things other than that. Now that's perhaps a fault of the medical establishment, because it's obsessed with vaccination as the only solution. And so what Bobby's saying there is technically accurate, just to say. It's not the same as saying, go out and get your measles vaccine immediately. That's not what he said.
Okay, so then we'll sort of there, because the Maha faves is saying, how dare you say that? We trusted you, right? So he's actually saying something that's reasonable.
Yeah, everyone's so great. It's Bobby calls me from time to time. All right?
Yeah.
And the other day he called me out of the blue. I never called him, as you would imagine. It's a little bit of a power difference there. He assured me that there are things in play right that will really be strongly supported by things. Now, I don't know what he's got in the oven, but I really suggest that people back off a little bit, like you say, Rock, back off the ledge, give him a little bit of time, and have faith. This is a guy that has spent the last third of his career actively pursuing these issues, and to think that he's somehow going to abandon his principles because he has the privilege of being HHS secretary, that's a job I wouldn't find out. He is under pylons and alligators right now, totally overwhelmed by the tyranny of the earth, and doing his best to fight battles on multiple fronts, including from the bloody New York Times and the corporate media about all this. And now he's getting shot at by his base. So just take a deep breath, relax a minute, have some faith in the guy. I'm confident that for the next few weeks you'll see some things like the Peter Marks firing. Peter Marks firing was all about getting access to theirs. Peter Marks is blocking theirs. Why is that important? Well, because we want to analyze theirs. Why is that important? Because we're all pretty darn sure that there is some interesting information in theirs that is going to teach us about the risks of this RNA vaccine and the risks of vaccines in general. So just take a deep breath, step back for a minute, and be careful.
That's why we have you.
In DC communication, be careful that you're reading what they're saying and not projecting what you think they're saying.
Right.
I like Dr. Malone's bedside manner. When everyone's panicking, you can tell that's tried and true. Dr. Robert Malone, always great to see you. Longtime guest here on the show. You were one of the very few out there fighting the good fight at the very beginning of this whole COVID nightmare. You were censored, you were banned, you were blocked, you were vilified, you were canceled. But we're glad that we're able to have you back here. It's great that you were vindicated in all of this. Dr. Malone, thank you so much. Great to see you.
Thanks for having me.